My main mission now is to warn people how dangerous AI could be.
Did you know that when you became the godfather of AI?
No, not really. I was quite slow to understand some of the risks. Some of the risks were always very obvious, like people would use AI to make autonomous lethal weapons. That is, things that go around deciding by themselves who to kill. Other risks, like the idea that they would one day get smarter than us and maybe would become irrelevant, I was slow to recognize that. Other people recognized it 20 years ago. I only recognized it a few years ago that that was a real risk that might be coming quite soon.
What is it that's triggered your concern?
It's been a combination of two things. So playing with the large chatbots, particularly one at Google before GPT-4, but also with GPT-4, they're clearly very competent. They clearly understand a lot. They have a lot more knowledge than any person. They're like a not very good expert at more or less everything. So that was one worry. And a second was coming to understand the way in which they're a superior form of intelligence, because you can make many copies of the same neural network. Each copy can look at a different bit of data, and then they can all share what they learned. So imagine if we had 10,000 people, they could all go off and do a degree in something, they could share what they learned efficiently, and then we'd have 10,000 degrees. We'd know a lot then. We can't share knowledge nearly as efficiently as different copies of the same neural network can. AI is potentially very dangerous, and there's two sets of dangers. There's bad actors using it for bad things, and there's AI itself taking over. And they're quite different kinds of threat. And we know bad actors are already using it for bad things. I mean, it was used during Brexit to make British people vote to leave Europe in a crazy way. So a company called Cambridge Analytica was getting information from Facebook and using AI. And AI's developed a lot since then. Yeah. It was probably used to get Trump elected. I mean, they had information from Facebook and it probably helped with that. We don't know for sure because it was never really investigated. But now it's much more competent, and so people can use it far more effectively for things like cyber attacks, designing new viruses, obviously fake videos for manipulating elections, targeted fake videos by using information about people to give them just what will make them indignant. There's risks that come from people misusing AI.
Yeah.
And that's most of the risks and all of the short-term risks. And then there's risks that come from AI getting super smart and deciding it doesn't need us.
Is that a real risk?
And I talk mainly about that second risk because lots of people say, is that a real risk? Mm-hmm. And yes, it is. Now, we don't know how much of a risk it is. We've never been in that situation before. We've never had to deal with things smarter than us. So really the thing about that existential threat is that we have no idea how to deal with it. We have no idea what it's going to look like. And anybody who tells you they know just what's going to happen and how to deal with it, they're talking nonsense. So we don't know how to estimate the probabilities it'll replace us. Some people say it's like less than 1%. My friend Yann Lecan, who was a postdoc with me, thinks, no. We're always going to be, we build these things, we're always going to be in control. We'll build them to be obedient. And other people, like Yudkowsky, say, no, these things are going to wipe us out for sure. If anybody builds it, it's going to wipe us all out. And he's confident of that. I think both of those positions are extreme. It's very hard to estimate the probabilities in between.
If you had to bet on who was right out of your two friends?
I simply don't know. So if I had to bet, I'd say the probabilities in between, and I don't know where to estimate it in between. I often say 10 to 20% chance they'll wipe us out. But that's just gut, based on the idea that we're still making them, and we're pretty ingenious. And the hope is that if enough smart people do enough research with enough resources, we'll figure out a way to build them so they'll never want to harm us.
Sometimes I think if we talk about that second path, sometimes I think about nuclear bombs and the invention of the atomic bomb and how it compares. Like, how is this different? Because the atomic bomb came along and I imagine a lot of people at that time thought our days are numbered.
Yes, I was there. We did.
Yeah, but we're still here.
We're still here, yes. So the atomic bomb was really only good for one thing, And it was very obvious how it worked. Even if you hadn't had the pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it was obvious that it was a very big bomb that was very dangerous. With AI, it's good for many, many things. It's going to be magnificent in healthcare and education and more or less any industry that needs to use its data. It's going to be able to use it better with AI. So we're not going to stop the development. You know, people say, well, why don't we just stop it now? We're not going to stop it because it's too good for too many things. Also, we're not going to stop it because it's good for battle robots, and none of the countries that sell weapons are going to want to stop it. Like the European regulations, they have some regulations about AI, and it's good they have some regulations, but they're not designed to deal with most of the threats. And in particular, the European regulations have a clause in them that say none of these regulations apply to military uses of AI. So governments are willing to regulate companies and people, but they're not willing to regulate themselves.
So the key concern here is that it could exceed human intelligence, indeed the massive human intelligence.
Very few of the experts are in doubt about that. Almost everybody I know who's an expert on AI believes that they will exceed human intelligence. It's just a question of when.
And at that point, it's really quite difficult to control them.
Well, we don't know. We've never dealt with something like this before. There's a few experts, like my friend Yann LeCun, who think it'll be no problem. We'll give them the goals. It'll be no problem. They'll do what we say. Yeah. They'll be subservient to us. There's other experts who think absolutely they'll take control. Given this big spectrum of opinions, I think it's wise to be cautious. I think there's a chance they'll take control, and it's a significant chance. It's not like 1%, it's much more.
Could they not be contained in certain areas, I don't know, scientific research, but not, for example, the armed forces?
Maybe, but actually if you look at all the current legislation, including the European legislation, there's a little clause in all of it that says that none of this applies to military applications. Governments aren't willing to restrict their own uses of it for defence. For AI taking over, we don't know what to do about it. We don't know, for example, the researchers don't know if there's any way to prevent that. But we should certainly try very hard. And the big companies aren't going to do that. If you look at what the big companies are doing right now, they're lobbying to get less AI regulation. There's hardly any regulation as it is, but they want less because they want short-term profits. We need people to put pressure on governments to insist that the big companies do serious safety research. So in California, they had a very sensible bill, Bill 1047, where they said that at least what big companies have to do is test things carefully and report the results of their tests. And they didn't even like that.
So does that make you think regulation will not happen, or how does it happen?
It depends very much on what governments we get. Yeah. I think under the current US government, regulation is not going to happen. All of the big AI companies have got into bed with Trump, and yeah, it's just a bad situation.